So, hi everyone, thrilled to be with you. I'm Lisa Conway, one of the co-founders of CLF Philly, Carbon Leadership Forum Philly. And this is actually our first audience, other than Green Building United, that we're presenting to. And I have to thank Daphne and Danielle for being almost as eager to start this hub of CLF as we were as co-founders. So we've been in touch a lot. So thank you both so much. This is actually, sorry, that was the first slide from Green Building United. So basically, I think that all of you have some degree of knowledge of the Carbon Leadership Forum. Basically, they provide research. They're at the University of Washington. They provide research, they incubate tools, they do all kinds of things and have been for over a decade on the topic of embodied carbon. So it's a newer topic to a lot of us in terms of its, how frequently we actually hear the term, certainly. But they've been around for a long time, have incredible resources. And what we want to do here in Philly is raise awareness, provide education, and very importantly, build community around the topic of embodied carbon. These are our co-founders. I don't know if they might be listening in. Esther was actually supposed to be the presenter today, but she had a family emergency that involved flying to Tanzania. So I don't know if she's with us.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she had just gotten back from Tanzania, which is the really sad thing, and then had to go back again. And then Cecilia Freeman, who is locally here at Ewing Cole. And then I'm the VP of Sustainability for the Americas at Interface. So we actually bring a fairly diverse view to this topic. Esther actually teaches about it at Penn State and is thrilled to have the opportunity to come into the city. So the next time we can do in-person events, she's really excited to be able to do that and get out of State College for a little while. And then myself and Cecilia are both located here. So I'm excited that this whole pandemic situation has allowed me to spend some more time in the city that I call home. Interface is actually based out of Atlanta, but I've been with them for almost 15 years and have been located here in Philly. So I'm excited to not be on a plane all the time and be spending a lot more time to dig in here in Philly. I live in Fishtown and Cecilia is in South Philly. So our strategy is really to be a complementary initiative alongside many existing and reputable green building groups and initiatives like yourselves as AIA COAT. We just have this really specific focus on embodied carbon. It's been missing from a lot of the carbon conversations in a lot of groups. We think that we can provide some expertise to groups that are, have a full understanding of carbon, maybe even know what embodied carbon is, but just with our link to the CLF, we hope to just provide that expertise. And again, this community piece is really important. When Daphne, I think Daphne was the first person to reach out and say, can we actually work together? Can I be a liaison between our two groups? We were like, oh my gosh, yes. And we heard that you guys were already talking to the city about embodied carbon and some things were already moving. So all of that is just super exciting. And we can be an additional force to kind of put our name behind any initiatives that are happening already. We are pursuing being an official community under the Green Building United umbrella. So they have a passive house community. They have a Living Building Challenge community, and we are looking to be under that umbrella as well. So we're actually entering into kind of a 6-month trial with Green Building United, just to make sure that our little group of 3 isn't this huge strain on their resources. And they're going to be helping us with, event and registration management and things like that. So with embodied carbon still being such a new topic in the industry, there's a small but growing network of people globally really well-versed in implementation practices. And when I say that, it was interesting to learn that as we were setting up in Philly, there were already 24 people in Philadelphia and the surrounding area that were members of the Carbon Leadership Forum. So we already kind of had, 24 person base that are then members of CLF Philly. And we want to provide education, mentorship, and advocacy work for all of these practitioners, and really grow. I have kind of I guess global actually network of embodied carbon champions. It's really taken off, I think, most in Europe and in North America, I would say. And there's plenty of expertise. What we really need to build is that familiar network for everyone where, if you all as practitioners, get a project and want to do this and create case studies and whatever, that we can just really be the connectors, right? We're not the end all be all. I have the manufacturer's perspective, certainly on lowering embodied carbon, but I'm also a co-founder of the Materials Carbon Action Network, which has kind of brought a bunch of manufacturers together, as well as Gensler to offer a design perspective, and then Skanska to offer a contractor's perspective. But all of us are committed to really spreading awareness and providing education on this topic, and of course, committing to lowering the embodied carbon of our products as well. Cecilia has the unique perspective of an interior designer. This embodied carbon topic has really been an engineering and I would say architecture first, certainly measurement and practice, but with the renovation cycles for interior design, that offers a huge opportunity as well. So we're excited about really how diverse the stakeholder group is that we've started. So overall, our plan is really 50% community building, working with people like yourselves, 50% content delivery. We can certainly do embodied carbon 101 till the cows come home. We are really excited to work with others to create some case studies for this part of the country. I can tell you that given that my role is both North and South America, of course, we've seen the most uptake on fast forward progress on the West Coast, but I've seen a lot more movement actually in the middle of the country than I have on the East Coast in terms of really adopting this and implementing in practice. I would say the middle of the country has kind of responded in a way that's like, that's measurable. I can start with a handful of manageable material categories and just kind of like can practically move forward. Like even regional banks and some clients, as you all would think of them, that are really starting to dig into this, and it's really exciting. The co-founders of CLF Philly actually met in and I'll actually, that's my last slide, so I'm just going to end show and see your faces. But we all met at what we call a Carbon Love and Learn week that Interface hosts, which is 5 days, an hour per day, all about the topic of embodied carbon, with kind of the same approach, 50% content delivery and 50% like, let's just talk it out. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And that's how we met. So we think that that's been a really successful way to get people started. And then we've had both interior designers, architects. We've even had some contractors come through those. And then we've had about a third of those be owners, clients that are taking this on. And that's been really exciting to see. They're starting small. They're starting with a project, maybe even a past project where they have the bill of materials and they can say, what are our standards? What's the embodied carbon of our standards? And should we be thinking of something else? Or what is a bank branch right now versus our office space? So a lot of that work is really percolating behind the scenes. So certainly a group like you all, are primed and ready to be those that can lead the conversation with clients, but also be ready when clients are asking for it, so that we can be ahead as a region. So I'll just pause there for any questions, comments, we are totally open and excited to be working with you all, and would love to hear what you've been working on in this area as well.
Lisa, this is Paul Thompson, Blue Path Design. I'm also one of the co-facilitators of the Pass Pass community. So,
Yep.
you know, welcome to the group. David Hincher and others are also have been involved, as I'm sure you know.
Yep.
What, you know, there's this push for electrification, which means that refrigerant use is even more prevalent, and I've seen a couple presentations that have totally blown my mind as to the potential for loss of either embodied or operational carbon, depending on how you define it, when something goes wrong, or just through daily use of mini split systems and other refrigerant based mechanical systems. Like, I don't know if you have any particular thoughts about that, other than, we should, I know there's development of refrigerants that are, have one, forget what the acronym is, COF or whatever to have much lower greenhouse gas potential refrigerants. Do you know where that's headed? Like, what's the bleeding edge, and when is it going to be implemented?
I don't. I mean, that's kind of outside, to some degree, outside of embodied carbon. When we think about MEP systems, it's actually interesting that for a renovation, for example, TI materials and MEP systems are actually the really big offenders, but there isn't a lot of data on MEP systems. And therefore we have data certainly on refrigerants, but in terms of life cycle analysis that then gets third-party verified into an EPD, that has been kind of a missing piece. And there's actually a whole separate group out of CLF that's national, that's working on how more of that data can be gathered. Because when we think about the time we have to reverse global warming being less than a decade, it really matters the emissions that come right now, right? So if we're doing a renovation cycle now, and we're thinking about gains on the operational side that we're not going to make significantly in comparison until 12 years from now or whatever, it's something to consider. We're not saying embodied carbon, forget about operational carbon, but we are saying, think about whole carbon, because of that. For so long, it's been about operational, because over the building life cycle, that's the larger piece. But within 10 years, it's actually 72% that's tied to embodied, and that can't be reduced over time. Even a net zero energy building, on day one, that building's entire carbon impact has been all the stuff that has been made and gets on site to make the building. So it's all about the balance. It's not either or. It's just bringing awareness to to the need for that. So I'm not as well versed in electrification policy. I mean, I know that Green Building United is working a lot more on that side in terms of policy. I'm a lot more familiar with the policy on the embodied carbon side, which has been passed in California and Colorado to date.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And that your point, Paul, about, here I am on the COAT call, and then, I'm also part of Passive House. That's exactly why we wanted to just be a part of Green Building United. We're all the same people, doing this crossover stuff. So we didn't want to compete for audience and things like that.
Well, Lisa, I want to thank you guys also for your campaign on Ask Me About Embodied Carbon. I know several friends that have gotten the hat. I've got my trucker hat. I've worn it to go get groceries. I've worn it to softball games, and I've had so many people ask me about it, and it just opens the conversation about, like, of course I talk about buildings and their importance in this, but I could also talk about any of your sort of day-to-day choices. So it's a really great sort of provocation piece
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
get out there. Maybe we need to have all of our folks have the trucker hat.
Yeah. We'll send that around. And I was on a call with someone yesterday who had a shirt that said, "I love buildings," like just super simple, black shirt, white letters, "I love buildings." So that the two of those together can just like define your whole existence.
Yeah. Well, we had Stephanie come and present to our
Yep.
group in the 2030 working group. And it was, I think eye-opening for some of us that, embodied carbon is so important, especially as, not that operational carbon isn't also important, as you say, like it's the whole package, but as states like New York are looking to green their grid and have the electricity that's coming to the building, have a low embodied carbon. Yeah, it shifts that, and you can't get rid of the embodied carbon. Once it's there, it's there.
Right.
So that, I really look forward to the collaboration with you all and our policy group to help our area really, get to where some of these other municipalities and states are on legislating some things.
Yeah, and the exciting part about policy, I think, is on the operational carbon side, it takes investment. It's upgrades, it's getting approval. You always need approval, but you know what I mean. With embodied carbon, it's really a specification and procurement strategy. No one needs to invest an additional dollar. Data just needs to be used as part of the purchasing process. Think about like everything that the city buys for buildings. Just using that data, whether it's running an RFP process or using it alongside the financial cost, it's really just kind of making more holistic decision making. So no extra money needs to be spent. So in my mind, that means it's easy, right? Of course, it's not going to be easy, but I think that that's a very strong part of the argument for policy. And we're starting to actually see some clients do that, especially tech customers, but they're actually using that embodied carbon data alongside price availability and other things that they were considering before. So I think it bodes well. There's a great study that just came out from RMI as well that says there's 20, I can circulate it after this call, but 24 to 46% embodied carbon reduction savings for a less than 1% increase in cost. So really exciting data starting to surface.
I see your colleague Cecilia is on here now.
Oh, good. Cecilia, say hi.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I know.
No, it's okay.
Say a little bit about
the presentation.
Good. Say a little bit about yourself, because I didn't see you were on. I jumped right in.
Oh, that's okay. That's all on me. Thank you for presenting. So my name's Cecilia Freeman, as Lisa said, and I'm an interior designer at UN Cole. I'm relatively new to the AEC game, as I've had a different life in a different industry. But I went to school in Oregon in part because I wanted my design education to be focused on sustainability. And I did want to move back east. And I found that there's a lot of ways to kind of impact and join the community on the sustainability side. And then when I attended the Interface Love and Learn, where I met Lisa and Esther, my mind was just open to this whole other carbon piece that I had no idea about. So we were all excited to kind of get started in the Philly area, specifically with something that could kind of bind us all together through embodied carbon. So I'm super excited to keep learning more about it and to explore these alignments that are happening with AIA Coat and with GBU, and to just move forward and learn from everybody else. And
Yep. We certainly have learning to do too. I'm not a practitioner, so we need everybody. Thanks, Cecilia.
It's so nice to meet you, Cecilia. And thank you so much for your presentation, Lisa. We're so excited about the work both of you and your team are doing. Speaking to a group of primarily architects, a lot of folks on this call are really trying to figure out how to start approaching embodied carbon within their firms. What recommendations do you have for sort of first steps, things that we can do by the end of 2021 given that this is a really pressing issue, and what things should we be looking ahead to too?
Sure. For any of you, open offer for a little brainstorming session at your own firms. Just based on one of the biggest things that impacts the movement of all of this is culture, which won't surprise anyone. But awareness is a big piece. Once you know, you can't unknow, right? So going into the specification of anything suddenly carries a bit of this burden, which can be reduced. It reduces over time. I really recommend taking a past project that's already completed and just doing an embodied carbon assessment of that bill of materials, starting with the top 9 material categories, which I can send out, but they're the ones that are live in EC3, and go from structure all the way through finished materials. For interior designers, it's about quantity of materials and surfaces. So starting with ceilings, walls, and floors makes a lot of sense. And then from an envelope perspective, you're looking at glass, insulation, and timber. And then, from a structural perspective, it's concrete and steel primarily. The biggest opportunity if you're doing new construction is concrete and steel. And then the biggest opportunity when you're doing renovation kind of depends, but if you stick with the with insulation, ceiling, walls, and floors, you'll have covered a good portion of it for sure. There's always some strange, multifamily gypsum's going to pop way up because you have so many walls, which is different than, an open plan office. So really just thinking about the type of space. So if you can do that and just kind of divide and conquer even those 9 material categories and just look for EPDs, it's kind of a 2-part strategy. Where there's data in a category, use it. My category of flooring, tons of data. I'll lean on you all for how available concrete EPDs are in this area. That's the part where advocacy comes in. If we don't have enough to work with right now, if you're doing a project in Oregon, you have about 100,000 concrete EPDs to choose from. My guess is we're nowhere near that here. But there are most categories where it's not a regional sourced item are going to have EPDs. So just use that data and start getting familiar with comparing it. But then once you understand the low embodied carbon materials, you don't need to relearn that, right, for the next project. You can just implement that, and you can track it through a tool like EC3 or one-click LCA, or you don't have to track it, and you can just know that you've done that research and now you're using those materials.
So Lisa, is there a database that you would recommend, or databases you would recommend to us to go to find these EPDs?
Yeah, EC3, which is the Embodied Carbon in Construction Calculator. It's available for free at buildingtransparency.org. That has the EPDs for the nine material categories that I mentioned, with resilient flooring being added. And I think communication cabling is live in that as well. I'm also on the board of Building Transparency, the nonprofit that houses that tool. So one-click LCA is great, but it's $5,000 a seat. Building Transparency has a free tool. So the EPDs are in there. So you really don't have to, unless you're looking at something that's not in there, like paint, for example, then you can just use that tool to find them all in one place. Otherwise, it's more of a search through manufacturers' websites. But more and more of those material categories are coming online. But I would just start with something manageable. For where you all sit with specifications, there are a lot of, I call them non-emotional materials. Carpet is an emotional material for people. You can't just switch it out and they're like, okay with it. Some of the non-emotional materials are things like drywall. So you may have not previously been in an advocacy role and having a lot of communication with the contractor about, why you may have specified a specific drywall and not to just switch that out. That is a necessary conversation to have with contractors to make sure that the materials that you intend to get on the project actually get on the project. So really considering embodied carbon a performance specification, something that can't just be switched out. Having those conversations early and often is really a good idea to get the project team on board.
Yeah, I want to reinforce that about performance specifications. On the project, I mean, we're all in this pandemic, and on this project here in New Jersey, I'm getting multiple substitutions because of material availability. And if you have that written into your specs, that there's something required performatively, then everything needs to measure up to that. Now, I don't know if there's dozens of low embodied carbon drywall that I would have at my disposal to say, okay, well, you can't get this one, go to that one. But the performance side of specs at least helps to support you when they come back and say, well, I really want to use this. Well, does it meet our spec or not?
Yeah, and especially now, it's a great point, David. Embodied carbon is never going to be the only decision-making criteria. If it extends the project timeline by 6 weeks, I'm assuming that we're not going to wait for that drywall. But there are a lot of options. And if you, I don't want to take all your time today, but if you'd like, we can come back and do just a quick demo of the EC3 tool. Because what you can do, what you can do is a not to exceed and still know that you have competition. So you have whatever you're comfortable with, 3, 5 drywall options, but it's a not to exceed. So we don't have to go to the highest just because mine wasn't available. We can go to, one of the lowest 5 or whatever. There's a really easy way to do that. And that's really necessary for public money projects as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We definitely have an action-packed second half of the agenda to roll through with all of our many, many subcommittees. But thank you all again for joining us on a Thursday morning early.
Thanks in advance for your collaboration in the future. We're excited for it.
Thank you, Lisa.